Africa is a vast and diverse continent known for its rich culture, diverse wildlife, and stunning landscapes. Africa is the second largest continent in the world, home to over 1.3 billion people. From the Sahara Desert to the rainforests of the Congo Basin, Africa boasts an incredible diversity of landscapes, cultures, and languages. But have you ever wondered what Africa was called before it was named Africa? And how did this vast continent come into being? The amalgamation of the continent? Well, let's start at the beginning. The geological history of Africa dates back over 3 billion years when the continent was part of a supercontinent called Gondwana. Over time, the continent drifted apart from Gondwana and began to take shape as we know it today. But what was Africa like before it was named Africa? The continent was home to several powerful kingdoms and empires, including the Kingdom of Kush, Ghana, and the Mali Empire. These kingdoms were known for their wealth, trade, and cultural achievements, including construction of magnificent cities and buildings. However, everything changed with the start of colonization. Now, some of you may be thinking, Africa? That's just a big hot desert, right? Wrong. Africa is an incredibly diverse continent with a complex and vibrant history often overlooked in mainstream education. First up, we have Egypt. When most people think of ancient Egypt, they imagine towering pyramids and mysterious pharaohs. But did you know that the civilization that built those wonders was one of the first in the world, dating back to around 3100 BCE? Over the centuries, Egypt grew into a powerful empire dominating trade and culture in the region. Moving down the coast, we come to Ethiopia, one of Africa's oldest nations. According to legend, Ethiopia was founded by the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. The country's history is more complicated, with powerful kingdoms rising and falling over centuries. However, one thing that has remained constant is Ethiopia's deep cultural and religious traditions, which include the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and the ancient language of Ge'ez. Further south, we come to the Kingdom of Zimbabwe, which flourished from around the 11th to the 15th century. Despite its name, the Kingdom of Zimbabwe was not located in the modern-day country, but in what is now Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Mozambique. The kingdom was known for its impressive stone structures, including the Great Zimbabwe Ruins, which are still a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Finally, let's talk about the history of one of Africa's most influential countries, South Africa. The region, now South Africa, was home to many indigenous tribes for centuries before the arrival of European colonizers in the 17th century. Since then, South Africa has worked to rebuild itself as a democratic and inclusive nation, but the scars of apartheid still linger. From the ancient kingdoms of Egypt and Ghana to the struggles of modern-day South Africa, Africa's history is one of complexity, diversity, and resilience. So the next time someone tries to tell you that Africa is just a big hot desert, you can set them straight and share some amazing stories that make up this fascinating continent. However, how were those names given to the countries that made up Africa? Then let's talk about the amalgamation of African countries. Firstly, it's important to note that Africans did not originally create most African countries. Instead, they were created by European colonizers who, during the scramble for Africa in the 19th and 20th centuries, carved up the continent for their own gain. While colonial powers did play a significant role in shaping African borders, the actual process was complex and often involved negotiations with local leaders and rulers. Additionally, the names of African countries were not given arbitrarily, but often had cultural or historical significance. For instance, Ghana is named after the ancient West African Kingdom of Ghana, while Nigeria was named after the Niger River. The Gambia is a small country located within Senegal, but the two countries have separate histories and identities, and it would not have made sense to merge them. As for Eswatini, the country's former name Swaziland was changed by King Mswati III in 2018 to mark the country's 50th anniversary of independence and to differentiate it from Switzerland. Lastly, while it is true that colonial powers drew straight lines on maps to divide up African territory, these borders often did not follow natural geographic features, or take into account existing ethnic and cultural groups. This has led to various conflicts and issues within African nations since their independence. But despite all the weird country names and straight borders, the African continent has made some progress towards unity. The Organization of African Unity (OAU), which was established in May 1963 and succeeded by the African Union in July 2002, comprises all African countries except Morocco, which left in 1984 but rejoined in 2017. Its goal is to promote economic, social, and political integration among African countries, and it has made some strides towards achieving that goal. For example, in 2018, the African Continental Free Trade Area was established to create a single market for goods and services across the continent. This could be a game changer for Africa's economy, as it would make it easier for businesses to trade with each other and for consumers to access a wider variety of goods and services. First, let's clarify that Africa wasn't always a single continent as we know today. In fact, around 250 million years ago, it was part of a much larger landmass called Gondwana. Over millions of years, the tectonic plates shifted and Africa broke away from the other landmasses to become a continent of its own. The region now known as Egypt was home to one of the most advanced ancient civilizations, the pharaohs, who built the Great Pyramids and developed hieroglyphic writing. Meanwhile, in the region now Nigeria, the Nok culture existed, known for their terracotta sculptures and ironworking skills. And in present-day Ethiopia, the Oxumite Empire was thriving and trading with the Roman Empire. But what was Africa called back then? The answer is that it didn't have a unified name as it does now. Instead, it was divided into regions and kingdoms, each with its name and identity. Some of the earliest recorded names include Tarseti and Kemet, used to describe parts of ancient Egypt, and Alkebulan, used to describe the entire continent. In fact, the name Africa didn't come into use until much later, around the time of the Roman Empire. The Romans used the term Africa to refer specifically to the area that is now Tunisia, which was a significant trading post for the Roman Empire. Over time, the name Africa was adopted to describe the entire continent. Still, it was in the 19th century that the term became widely recognized and accepted as the official name for the continent. It's fascinating to think about how much has changed over the millennia and how much has remained the same. How did the name Africa come to be? The name Africa is believed to have originated from the ancient Romans, who called the region Afri of the Berber people who lived there. The Romans used this term to describe the entire continent, previously known as the land of Egyptians or the Ethiopians. Over time, the name Afri evolved into Africa. The rest is history. We must go back to the beginning to truly understand the continent's history. Africa is believed to be the birthplace of humanity, with some of the earliest human remains being discovered there. These discoveries date back millions of years and offer valuable insight into the evolution of our species. Fast forward a few thousand years, and we see the rise of some of the world's earliest civilizations in Africa. The ancient Egyptians, for example, were known for their impressive architecture, art, and culture. The Egyptian civilization lasted for thousands of years and left an indelible mark in the continent's history. However, as with any civilization, there were also dark periods in Africa's history. The transatlantic slave trade, for example, saw millions of Africans being forcibly taken from their homes and shipped off to work on plantations in the Americas. The period devastated the continent, with entire communities torn apart and families ripped away from each other. The 19th and 20th centuries also saw the colonization of Africa by European powers. These colonizers carved up the continent and imposed their will on the native populations, often through brutal means. This period of colonization profoundly impacted Africa's history, shaping its politics, culture, and economy in ways still felt today. However, despite these struggles and hardships, Africa has also been home to some incredible achievements and advancements. For example, the continent has produced some of the world's most influential musicians, artists, and writers such as Fela Kuti, Chinua Achebe, and Miriam Makeba. This movement inspired people worldwide and showed that change is possible despite seemingly insurmountable odds. It was in the 20th century that African nations began to gain independence from their European colonists. This decolonization period was marked by hope and conflict as newly independent nations struggled to establish stable governments and economies. Today, Africa is a continent in transition. While many countries face significant challenges such as poverty, disease, and political instability, others are making great strides in economic development, education, and technology. One area where Africa is particularly promising is its abundance of natural resources. Africa has vast economic growth and development potential, from oil and gas to minerals and agricultural products. And as the continent continues to modernize and develop, we can expect to see even more innovation and progress in the years to come. So, what can we learn from the history of Africa? Well, for one thing, we can see its people's incredible resilience and strength in the face of adversity. Despite centuries of exploitation and oppression, Africans persevered and thrived. We can also see the importance of understanding the complex history of a place to appreciate its current state and future potential. In conclusion, the history of Africa is complex and multifaceted, filled with triumphs and tragedies. From the birthplace of humanity to the rise and fall of civilizations, the continent has seen it all. However, despite the struggles and hardships, Africa remains a place of resilience, strength, and hope. We hope you enjoyed this overview of Africa's history and encourage you to continue learning about this incredible continent. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the history of Africa. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Until next time, as we continue to explore Africa, let's keep an open mind and a curious spirit. There is so much to discover and learn. The more we know, the more we can appreciate this incredible land and its people.